Hi, and welcome back to this new lesson. In this lesson, I will finally color Luke's hair, but before doing that, I would like to do some studies and sketches with you, so I can explain how I sketch the hair, and later on we will of course also see how I color them directly on this illustration. But for the warm-up study part, I have prepared here some of my illustrations that I think are interesting for the airflow. I just put a white layer on top so we can then I can show you better the lines I follow while I draw air. So I think that we can analyze them and try to sketch some air strands as a warm-up and also as an exercise for you to practice how to draw really long and flowy air. Okay, let's get started. I think that I could start here because the shape is pretty simple and they are not too detailed because I was a little bit more sketchy here in this drawing. But what I think is the most important while drawing long hair is that you have to be confident with your lines. So you have to practice a lot doing this kind of wide and smooth brush strokes and changing direction often, like in this way. These are, of course, a skill again that you have to practice drawing this kind of lines a lot. It's not something you can learn in like a short amount of time or with not a lot of practice. So again, please make sure to sketch a lot in this way. And overall, what I think helps me thinking about the flow, of course, I think also like how heavy the air should be. Because, for example, here you can see that there is a certain weight, the air really long. So I try to kind of focus my attention on this and so on the movement they would do if there was some air flowing through them. Sometimes I would like to have a strong wind, or maybe like in this case, I think more of a sort of weak wind, a sort of breeze. So like the air are like just, instead of falling flat to the ground, they do this kind of wide opening here in this way. Maybe I use a darker color so you can see better. It is there that I drew the air like lying flat on the ground like this. Sometimes I do, but it is like in rare occasions or maybe when they are like lying on an object. Overall, I like to just give it some more movement. But even though if you were like just drawing them laying flat in this way, still the same rule applies. Really long and smooth lines, changing direction sometimes in this way. Adding some loose air strands really helps, giving sort of more realistic feeling to your hair and also more movement. So overall, I do this kind of movement. There isn't really a sort of rule, a trick I could teach you, because the way I learned to draw hair is just that I genuinely like to draw long hair, so I've just kept practicing for a lot. So I developed this kind of, it is almost a sort of involuntary movement of my end. Of course, sometimes I also put more intention in it, and I will show you it later. But here too, I was thinking that I wanted a strong wind flowing from like bottom to top, sorry. And I could maybe use purple, show you. Again, you start from the starting point of the air, and in this case was like, for example, here. They were lying on the ground and then going up. So I just created these movements. Overall, you should create maybe sort of semicircles. So like, this could be 1 and 2 in this way. Because again, if you manage to create regular shapes in your drawings, they will attract the viewer's attention. So I think actually one of the rules you could apply is to kinda almost try to create this sort of circles or regular shapes. Here actually I can almost see a triangle as well. And another one also going down kinda in this way. This is more like an overall look. In detail, aside from what I mentioned already of adding a lot of loose strands to the hair, actually I want to keep this here so you can see. What I recommend to do is also to vary a lot the size of your hair strands. Let me see a better example. For example, here. Here there are also some shapes that I wanted to create, a bit more interesting. Overall, as you can see, I tend to have really, let's use another color. I used to have usually really wide sort of group of hair that then goes into almost nothing, like in this section here. It is like they are kinda doing a sort of turnaround. And then you have another big group of hair, big shape. This creates movement and helps just having like a feel also of a sort of lightweight feeling. Here as well, I also like to do this sort of twisting the hair, because then you also can then create a nice effect of light and shadows. So having like doing huge circles, changing direction often, and then varying the size, I think they are the key points for drawing interesting and flowy long hair. Here I was even trying to have this kind of more complex shape to just make her hair a little bit more like distinguishable from the others. And you can also vary, like, for example, the tip of the hair. Usually I like to draw like a thin tip. For example, you can see that his hair always ends in a thin ending, like this. While to change a bit, hair usually ends with this sort of flat ending, as you can see here. This is also a way that a trick you can use just like to vary also your hairstyles. In this case, for me it was a choice more of character design. Because I like to associate his hair with fire, so I think about fire and so like some flames going up in this way. Having like really thin ends, while for her I was thinking more of wings. So like having these movements ending in this way would kind of remind me more of like the wings, for example, of a bird in this way. Really, really sketchy. Here as well, again, also grouping your hair in major groups could help you achieving an interesting flow, because as you can see here, I have three, like, let's change color. I have three major sections. One here, also doing this movement. Another one here, that has basically the opposite flow almost, because the hair are kinda going here, like being wrapped around his arm. And then there is this other one going in the other direction. And this creates just this, I would say, feeling of movement, like ample movement, really like kind of flying, sort of flying feeling. So I can show you just how I would sketch maybe some strand of hair from scratch. And then we can move to the coloring phase. Feel free as always to follow along. You can now draw maybe the head from the back, the neck and the shoulders. I can also show you actually how I start from the top of the head, since I didn't do it in the illustration because I followed another process. But so overall, okay, let me now change a brush. I will use purple. Usually find a point on the head or a line, depends on like also the hairstyle of the character, but let's go with like easiest case. You just choose this point here on the top, for example, and all the hair will fall from this one. And you, of course, will have to follow the shape of the head. And also consider that the hair have itself a volume. So you will not draw the hair flat on the head in this way. This is wrong. Let me actually just leave it as an example. That. But let me also copy this now. You want to have some volume. So from here, you can just actually, if you want, slightly draw it already. And then from here, you just start to draw the hair strands going down in this way, following the head, the shape. Then to have a nice flow again, don't go down like this, just straight in this way, because it would be pretty boring, unless maybe there is a really clear reason and maybe composition that you want to achieve in this way. But still try to create some movement. Even if you still want maybe to not have a lot of movement, just create some like this. Depends also if you want really smooth hair or a bit wavy. I usually like to draw pretty wavy hair. But this is what I would do maybe if I had to draw really like flat hair without a lot of wind in my illustration, or just in the sketch overall. With the tip, with the hair ending, changing direction a lot of times like this. Then maybe having something like this. And here as well. And again, also remember some loose hair strands, because all these groups are kinda together. So usually, yeah, I start with a lot of lines, then I thicken some of them to just know where actually I want to have a group of hair and where maybe I want more like empty space. So I usually do this kind of sketches. And now also delete a little bit the head so you can see better. While if you want now to have some movement, let me quickly move these on the side, to the side. These. Trying to draw the same hairstyle. I need a little bit, I need more space. Okay, like this. Creating the same hairstyle, you could think of doing something like this. Again, we draw first some volume. And then you could start maybe going on this side. This way. Then maybe ending with this curve. Also, as always, start with big shapes and then you maybe go into detail a bit more. You could do something like this. Maybe we could have some flat endings here. We could also create more movement on the top. Depends, of course, always on the hairstyle you want to draw. But yeah, something like this. This is a like really rough sketch. Usually I also rely on rendering to fix the flow a bit. You could try now also maybe another style.